Hey y'all, Lily here. Today we are going over Pettigrew State Park, which happens to be a beautiful state park located here in North Carolina and is a suggestion from one of my members, Sergio, who has actually been to the area. And if you go to the blog, which I will have linked in the description, the photo that I used for the header image is actually one that Sergio took and was wonderfully gracious enough to let me use it. So I just want to say a big thank you to him, not only for his photo, but also the suggestion in general. This area has a few different stories, so we're going to spend a little bit of time here. Today we are going to focus on one piece of lore, and then we will end up looking at a nearby plantation and cemetery that are both located on the state park property. But today we are looking at a canine cryptid. Now, whether this is a dogman or a werewolf or some other kind of canine cryptid is unknown, but we do have a few stories that go along with this one. So we're going to dive right in, and the way I'm going to do this today is going to be a little bit different than the way I normally do Lily's Lore and Legends. You know, normally I do the lore, the facts, and then my thoughts. But in the manner, or in the case of today, just to kind of have a nice little flow of things, we're actually going to do the lore, the facts, and my thoughts on each little story, so that way we can move through things without you guys having to wait until the very end to hear everything put together. To get started, Pettigrew State Park, like I said, is located here in North Carolina. It's north from me. I'm down on like the little southern tip. But it's up near the Outer Banks and Roanoke Island. If you are unfamiliar with Roanoke Island, that is, of course, where we had the lost colony of Roanoke. We also have a location known as Kill Devil Hills, and that is where the Wright brothers took their first flight at Kitty Hawk. So, at least if I'm not mistaken, it's all like that, yeah. I have to think sometimes, because we do have a monument that signifies the Kitty Hawk flight right at Kill Devil Hill. So, it gets a little confusing. But, so to get started, I did mention that the lost colony is in the nearby area, and our very first piece of lore does relate to them. Now, if you are a fan of Lily's Lore, then you know I don't really think much of people calling the lost colony lost. So we're going to breeze over this one. The lost colony was not lost. They failed to look for them when they were told where they were. And they took years to even begin the search. So they're not really lost. They didn't look. We're not going to assume a pack of werewolves or dogmen took them out. That being said, now there were indigenous people that have been in the area. We know since, let's see, around, this is forever ago, right? So 9,500 to 8,000 BC is when the first people came to the area. The, and I hope I pronounced this right, but the Carolina Algonquin people, I apologize if I butchered that. They came to the area. We have canoes that were built by them, and they actually were resurfaced during a time period in the 80s where we had to flood Lake Phelps, which is the lake that is in Pettigrew State Park. They had to flood it, and these canoes came up, and it's really cool. There are some that are on display. I have a cat that is doing cat things. Basil, stop. Can we do anything together on camera without Basil making his presence known in some way? For those of you who are new, Basil is one of my cats, and he is the furry little face that you see on all of Lily's Lore stuff. But, so we know when these people came to the area based off these canoes that we only found because of a wildfire that had us flooding the lake. But anyways, you can see some of these canoes in museums, but most of them were actually reburied, and the idea behind that is without being exposed to the oxygen and everything, they're going to stay in their original condition as long as they stay covered. So we can find them at any point in time. How wonderful is that? Now, these were the first indigenous people to interact with the European settlers when they came over. So in terms of the lost colony, yes, they would have known them. But I tried to do, this was yesterday that I did this little bit of research, and it was live on stream. So you can see how much of a brain function I have there at early in the morning. And it was pre-coffee too. I was just drinking water while I was on stream. But I tried to do a quick search to see if they had any kind of canine lore in their history, and I couldn't find it. I did find that there is a tribe that is either of the same name or a very similar name, because there was this one tribe that had a slightly different spelling. It was like one letter difference. There was an A added in, and people kept using these terms interchangeably, so I was not sure if the tribe that was in the Carolinas is the same one that's up in Canada. But either way, neither one had any kind of mention of a canine cryptid spirit or anything, like nothing. So, I think we can put out werewolves and dogmen again attacking the lost colony in that sense. All right, so we're going to continue on here. This next piece of lore very much happened, and before we continue on, I just want to take a minute to say that in this case, it is a situation where somebody was attacked by an unknown canine, and they did not survive the attack. Regardless of what your thoughts are on the situation as far as whether or not it was a dogman or werewolf or, a coyote or dog or anything else, someone did lose their lives, and we all should be very respectful of that before we go making any kind of accusations, because this is a very sad and traumatic event. But in February 2019, in the county of, I believe it's pronounced Pantio, located in Beaufort County, North Carolina, which is about 50 miles by trail from Pettigrew State Park. In the early mornings, 77-year-old Brenda Hamilton was out for a walk when she was attacked. She was later found by her neighbors. They got her to the hospital, but like I said, she did not survive the attack. They did DNA testing on her clothes and a nearby rodent that had been killed by apparently the same canines. And they did testing on nearby dogs to try and determine which canine was the culprit. Unfortunately, they were unable to determine whether or not the DNA that was found was even domestic or wild, because it was the type of DNA they had to use that you couldn't determine between the two. And they did find 2 dogs that their DNA was on Brenda. However, it was one of those situations where the way the dogs acted was normal for their temperament and behavior, and not like a dog that had attacked somebody. Now, as somebody who is a dog bite victim themselves, I don't personally remember my dog attack because I was 3 years old. But from what I have been told, our dog acted very differently afterwards. And so I can understand what they're talking about when they say a dog's going to act differently after it bites a human versus one that hasn't. So these dogs were basically cleared, and it never was known which animals actually caused Brenda Hamilton's death. Now, because of this, unfortunately, it does mean that we have a lot of people who want to claim that it was werewolves or dogmen. So let's talk about the animal population that is around Pettigrew and just North Carolina in general. We have the only wild remaining red wolves in North Carolina. And when I say in North Carolina, we have them, I mean everywhere. These red wolves that are wild are only located in North Carolina in this one particular area, and there's not that very many of them. And these red wolves are going to come into play as we go on further to discuss things, but they were all moved to the area, I believe in the 80s. So let's see, they were moved when there was only a surviving population of 100 wolves, but now there's even fewer of them. I believe there's like less than 2 dozen. Additionally, we, like pretty much everywhere in America, we have a very active and large coyote population. And coyotes and red wolves look very similar. So sometimes people will mistake one for the other. Additionally, because the red wolves know that they are nearing extinction, they have just naturally sought out coyotes to mate with. And so we have, I think they're called coyote wolves is the way they pronounce it. But it is funny. I did see an article where it said these animals do not exist. They might not exist in the area that this article was discussing, but they do very much exist here in North Carolina. But it's just one of the ways these wolves are surviving. And even though they were relocated, do I have the actual? Because we got a lot of creatures out here that work. All right. Let's see. I don't have the exact name of where the red wolves were located. I have where the bears are located, but we're not going to discuss bears right now because the bear DNA is not canon DNA, so we don't have to worry about them with Brenda. But we do have a lot of black bears in the area too. But let's see. Just basically the whole Outer Banks area. If you see something that looks like a wolf, there's actually is a possibility it is a wolf, it is a red wolf, or it is a coyote. So if anything that was not a domestic dog attacked Brenda, it was more than likely a coyote. And I say a coyote and not the wolf just because of the temperaments of the two different animals. Coyotes are going to be ones that are going to be more likely to attack than the red wolves, just based off a lot of the research that I did on the creatures in general. And you guys know me, I love animals, so I'm naturally going to be all about that. And actually, you know what, before I get into this next little bit of piece, since we are discussing the animals, I am going to give you guys a little bit more animal population information. And some other things too. Like with Brenda Hamilton, we can also rule out werewolves because the moon was not full. It was only 78% full. And it was, let's see, it was still waxing. So it was getting fuller, but it was too far away by like a week. Let's see, I mentioned the black bears. And again, this information will come in handy here in a little bit with the next piece of lore. So I'm just going ahead and drop this for you. That at the Albemarle Pamlico Peninsula, that is a mouthful, it has the highest density of black bears in the world. So not just North Carolina, but in the world. So in this one particular area, we got a shit ton of black bears, and we got the only remaining red wolves, and we got coyotes. So right away, we have 3 culprits for what people could be seeing out there. Again, this will actually... the bear part really will play into the next piece of lore. I just want to go ahead and get this out while it is on my head. But, so, this piece is going to be of interest to everybody because we do have a type of coyote that people might be seeing that they don't even know exist. Alright, so we're going to talk about this because it ties in with Brenda and it does tie in with our next one. But we have something that is known as a devil dog. What is a devil dog? I know you're probably thinking, oh my god, Lily, where are you going with this one? Right, no, but devil dogs are a fun little name that we have for what is a black coyote. They just have like basically a genetic mutation. They're a little bit bigger than your normal coyotes, but they're not that big. They're only about 40 pounds. So I used to have a little collie mix. She was about 35 pounds. I had a family dog once upon a time that she was about 40, 45. She was a black lab. So, you know, small dog, but still bigger than what people would be expecting whenever it comes to your coyotes. But this is an interesting piece of information. When they did a recent coyote hunt, or controlled coyote hunts to help with the population, multiple black coyotes were found. 3 out of the 149, which seems like a high count for a rare coyote, were found during this hunt. However, this is a piece of information that's going to be blow you away. So that was about 2% of the hunt, right? 3 out of 149. But the actual population percentage is closer to 5.9%. Now, if you have no idea how many coyotes are in North Carolina, we don't have an exact count, but we are going to use a figure from Georgia, which neighbors North Carolina, and they estimate their coyote population to be about 250,000 coyotes. So let's do that math. We potentially have 14,750 devil dogs roaming North Carolina. So that is a really cool piece of information. And again, a devil dog is just nothing more than a black coyote. And again, something that people could be seeing. And with a number like this of a rare breed of coyote, if something that looked out of place attacked Brenda, it could have been a devil dog. But let's get on to our really big piece of lore. I know that's why you guys are all here. You guys have heard me ranting and raving on my last video on here on YouTube was a rant about this particular piece of lore. I had multiple streams on Twitch where my mouth just started and would not stop. and then, sorry, my straw's in the way. So we had multiple streams that we talked about this. I started typing. Actually, before I started typing, I started recording more. I was going to do a little bit more to get it out, right? You guys, I went for like an hour. I don't think that footage will ever get seen. More than likely. But I literally told myself while I was recording, shut up and start writing. So I did. 3,000 words later, I was like, I need to stop this. And I deleted a fair portion. It's still really long. But this one particular piece of lore, you can tell is going to be the piece for here. This is actually the most known story in regards to Pettigrew and there being either a dogman or werewolf, some kind of canine cryptid, at Pettigrew State Park. So, let's pause for a second. Let me get refocused, and then we're going to dive in. Because again, this is why you're here. This is the reason why you're here today. I know this. You know this. I know this. We both know this. So we're going to pause, and we're going to be right back. Okay. So I'm back. Reset. We're going to go over a story that took place that has been my driving force in this whole piece of research, and it is what first got me excited when I was doing my research. Now, again, I have already said that I have put out a lot about this particular story. Again, the last video I put out on YouTube was my rants about this story. I ranted on stream a lot. I recorded over an hour before I decided to start writing. So, we are going to talk about this because I have a lot of thoughts. But before we can talk about my thoughts, we need to talk about the lore. I need to tell you guys the story as it has been told, so you guys understand where I am coming from when I say things. So, but back in October of 2009, David and Lisa Letty had what is known again as the most notable encounter with the canine cryptid that is said to roam the area. The couple was from out of state and they drove down to experience the unseasonably warm fall we were having. They drove a pickup truck that was hauling a camper behind it, and were used to camping in various spots from parking lots to state parks and basically everything in between. All they needed was a place to park for the night and they could camp. By the time they arrived at Cresswell, which is the small town you have to drive through in order to reach Pettigrew State Park, it was already dark and the town was very poorly lit. So David pulled over and he uncovered his off-road lights before continuing through town. They eventually drive past a group of people who are hanging out on a piece of property in the dark. As David and Lisa drive past, he supposedly hears somebody say, "Good luck." And this, of course, was unsettling to the couple, but they continued on to the park, eager to get settled in for the night. Upon arriving to Pettigrew, David and Lisa realized the location was a bit swampy, and they weren't expecting that even though they were close to the Outer Banks. Now, I will just do a little quick side note right here. North Carolina, on the coast, we are very marshy. People do not realize this. Our water table is, it's just water. we are basically swimming at all times. Whether it's because of the humidity or the ground. Either way, we are swimming at all times. So you add in a little bit of rain and it gets extra swampy. Anyways, they just began to question their decision to camp overnight because of the swampiness, right? And the only thing I can gather is the reason why they were worried about it was getting stuck. They never actually said this, but I imagine that was why they were worried. If not, they did not say. But as they were beginning to question their decision, they met the park ranger on his way home for the night. The way he said he was leaving but would be back at sunrise made them more uneasy. The ranger was leaving with another camper who said they were not staying the night and were headed out themselves. Because they saw the other camper as well as the ranger leave, David and Lisa decided that they were not going to stay and leave as well. Even though they just simply needed a place to stay for the night, like a parking lot to park in, it was understandable based off their first encounter in Cresswell that they did not want to stay in that particular town overnight. So they decided to keep driving and head east towards Roanoke Island, where the next part of their journey was going to take them. Around 1 a.m., they saw either a red wolf or coyote walking along the highway and actually commented to each other about it because they had apparently just read about the red wolves online while driving. And a few minutes after seeing this red wolf, they hit something in the road. Unsure of what it was, David pulled over to see what they hit and if there was any damage done to his truck or the camper. And as they had been uneasy all night, he took out his gun with him, and Lisa stayed in the truck to make sure she was safe. Now, David walks around the truck and camper before spotting the damage done to the back of his camper, and as he is inspecting it, he feels something that is watching him from, off in the distance. Not that far off. He's in the road. It's not in the road, in the shoulder. But, let's see. I lost my place. All right. He feels something watching him. He turns towards the sound and sees a large canine creature in front of him. And he notes that the size of this creature was around 7 feet tall. And when he was standing completely upright, his teeth glinted in the moonlight. Now, this is one of these important things when I say the glinted in the moonlight. Again, I'm going to get back to this. The creature looks to David's side, and he follows his eye line where there is another creature lurking. David shoots the creature in front of him. He aims for the head, but it moves and instead just hits him in the chest instead, but is unfazed by the bullet. David rushes back to his truck, gets in, and then drives away. As they are fleeing, David looks in his rearview mirrors and side mirrors and can see 2 or 4, there's a bit iffy amount of numbers on there, creatures following him before they finally break off and leave the couple alone. David and Lisa make it to Roanoke Island, park in a grocery store parking lot, and stay the night. Now, either just before they turned in, they went into the grocery store, or the next morning when they went in. When they were coming out, they had an encounter with a local man. And he had claimed, David just talked to him on his own, not with Lisa, but the gentleman claimed that he had seen these creatures too, describing the one that David shot to a T. The couple continues their week-long stay without another cryptid run-in until the night before they leave. They went back to the mainland and they were staying not far from where their initial encounter was. I wish I had a map I could pull up for you guys right now so it could just be boop, 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 here are the spots. But it was relatively close, within a few minutes of each other. But he heard something outside his camper while they were staying there, and the next morning, the owner of the property shushes David when he goes to mention it, shh, your woman's around, don't talk about it, kind of thing. He mentions, the guy, looks at Lisa, and it's are women not allowed to know about werewolves? Just out of curiosity. The couple then hops back into their truck and drives back home, and as they were leaving the area, David swears one of them was watching them leave. And just to clarify, with this particular piece of lore, David and David alone was the only one to see and interact with these creatures. Lisa did not see anything. So, in a case like this, we don't have a lot of facts to go over, so we're just going to get straight into my thoughts. let's see here. I gotta take a little bit of a deep breath and scroll. I'm going to try and stay on topic with what I wrote. All right, but I might ramble. I've got about 30 minutes before I have to stop talking and actually get ready to stream. So let's just see where we can go from here. All right, so I followed with this story. There was 2 different versions of it that I saw, or watched, I should say. One was a TV visualization kind of thing, like what it actually came from like a YouTube channel that then ended up on the Travel Channel. So, one of those style things that you would see on the Travel Channel normally. And then the other one was the Dogman Encounters podcast, which I mostly referred to because this particular story, it was done against a podcast. There wasn't a visualization effect kind of thing going on to maintain interest. It was just David talking, and it was like over the phone kind of talking too. So I used that one because it was more of his story in his own words for when I was pulling out information to go off of. Now, in the Terrified in the Woods episode, with that one, it was nice because Lisa did tell her side of the story, but again, she never saw anything, and a lot of their story was condensed down to fit a 15-minute segment, whereas I believe the podcast was like possibly an hour or something like that. It was a lot longer. I do remember that. And you guys, you can only sit there and go back and re-listen and re-listen and re-listen before all the thoughts in your head start going, wait a minute. On first listen and on first watch, this is the Children of the Grave documentary all over again. For entertainment value, fuck yeah! Love it! Oh my god, yes. For my purposes, not so great. Anyways, so... But just so we're clear, and we will have some facts mixed in with this, like this fact right here. Leading up to October 2009, the hurricane season was pretty quiet, so we don't have to worry about things like wildlife that have been scattered due to storms or anything like that. Like you might have to worry about, honestly, even when Brenda had her dog attack and died, the hurricane season prior in 2018, we had Hurricane Florence come through. So that would have displaced many creatures, and they may not have found their way back home yet. So just to keep things in mind, that was a particularly quiet hurricane season. All right. So they get to Cresswell around, depending on which version of the story you listen to, around dusk, or it was pitch black night. Now, I do in my blog make some sarcastic comments about it being either 6 or 6:01, but let's be honest, it was the fall time, it was before the time change. It was, I actually did look up the times that the sun sets, and we're just going to say that they made it to Pettigrew between 7 and 8, so it was just before then that they had their run-in with the dudes. Now, the Terrified in the Woods only showed like 4 people that were standing on this property that they drove past through in Cresswell, and nobody spoke to them. When David was doing his Dogman podcast interview, he said there was 15 dudes, and that, he heard one of them say, "Good luck." And I have a couple of issues with this. Now, were their windows rolled down? Because he said. He did not say they yelled, they boomed, they shouted. None of that. They said, which means that he would have had to have been close enough for them to actually have just a simple conversational kind of thing, right? For them to hear. Even if it was a loud, good luck versus a good luck. The window still would have had to be down, I'm guessing, but it's like one of those things, if you felt creepy, why would your window be down? Because they had creepy vibes about how dark the town was. But it's a small town. Small towns don't always have a lot of lights. And they could have been doing about 25 miles an hour. I am unfamiliar with how fast the speed limits are in Crestwell and what road they were on in particular, but I'm guessing to be able to hear this kind of thing, you would have to drive by pretty slow. And 25 fits that, because, again, if they were creeped out, I don't know why they would be going slower than the posted speed limit if you're just eager to get to where you're going. But they also kind of mention like a stare down. Why? I understand why the guy standing on the property might be staring down somebody who's driving by with essentially their brights on because he had uncovered his off-roading lights before going. I can understand if they were standing around drinking why they might be staring them down. But why were Dave and Lisa staring them down? You're the ones in the car. You're the out-of-towners. Like, you're the ones who, I hate to use this word, but don't belong. Like, you're the new person. Like, why are you staring at people as you're just driving by? Like, why are you even taking note of them other than to add effect? But it also makes sense, like, by adding in this part of the story, why they wouldn't want to stay in Crestwell whenever they came out of Pettigrew and had to continue on with their path. But they finally make it to the park. Again, these are seasoned campers. One of the things that I did find very cute, and I do have to mention this. I mentioned it in my blog. I'm going to mention it here. It is very cute. David said that he had been camping for years and always camped in the tent. But whenever he and Lisa got together, he got the camper so she didn't have to sleep on the ground. That is fucking adorable. So sweet. Men, if you want your lady to go camping with you and she doesn't want to sleep in a tent, get a camper. That I will note. But it's safe to say, because he was a seasoned camper and they had been camping together with the camper, that they were familiar with how state parks work. Now, if you are unfamiliar with them, at least here in North Carolina, they do close at nighttime, usually around dusk, but not always. Right now, the Pettigrew State Park currently closes at 8 p.m. in October. And then they open back up in the morning. This is not a new thing. Even though we are in 2025, I can honestly say that back during that time period, I had plenty of friends who were the outdoorsy type and would go to our local state park and go camping all the time. And it was the same kind of thing. You get locked in at night. If there's a gate, in particular at the one here, there's a gate up. And I think at like 7 or 8, they lock it. You are locked in for the night. So I don't understand why they found it so weird that the park ranger was going home. Also, the dude that was leaving with them, they didn't ask, or he didn't say why he was leaving. It could have been the end of his day and he was just waiting until the end of the day to leave, or it could have been another reason. He could have been sick of the rain. They imply that it was like something creepy, and it's like, you didn't ask him why he wasn't staying. Like, you make no mention as to why this gentleman was leaving, but you feel the need to point it out. Like, it bothers me because it's just like you're making this decision based off of no information. When, again, all they could have been like was, we were worried we were going to get stuck in the swamp with our camper and we didn't want to stay. We wanted to stay somewhere a little bit drier, and that would have made so much more sense than all of this creepy vibes BS. But I digress. So this is between 7 and 8 p.m. All right. So you have Pettigrew. And you have Roanoke Island. Do you know what you have a lot of between Pettigrew State Park and Roanoke Island? Towns. Lots and lots of towns, especially when you're on a highway. Now, they might not be the best places to stay, but as Dave and Lisa said, they only needed a place to park. A parking lot would have been fine. Any Walmart, Food Lion, or just wherever would have worked. Even if it was just for a couple hours shut-eye. And again, this is also something that bothers me a little bit. If I'm truly freaked out, and it's one of those things where I possibly don't even want to stop until I am at my destination, which again could have made sense. If it was a thing like that and I was worried about staying overnight, me and the Viking would have been switching off. So nobody had to sleep. Like, we both wouldn't have to be asleep at the same time. Like, he could sleep and I drive, and then vice versa. But they didn't do this. They just proceeded to drive to Roanoke Island. Now, again, they would have had to leave around 7 and 8 p.m. from Pettigrew, they make it to Roanoke Island around 1 a.m. Roanoke Island is only 56 minutes away per Google Maps from Pettigrew State Park. Even if they left the park much later, at say 10 or 11, that is still a really long time to drive 56 miles. I believe, let's see, I think it was only when you drive it about maybe right around an hour, hour and a half for the drive time. And again, they would have to driven through multiple small towns, but it's not one of those things. Oh, I'm sorry. It was 51 miles and it's 56 minutes. So it's one of those things that it just makes me say, what was taking you so long? How slow are you driving that it takes you until 1 a.m. to get to Roanoke Island when you are supposedly freaked out? You drive faster when you're freaked out. You're not going to drive slower, right? Like, at the very least, you're going to drive the speed limit. You're going to get to Roanoke Island in under an hour. But no, this took them hours. Were they abducted by aliens along the way? Because that would have made a much more interesting story than the one we got. But they make it to Roanoke Island. And now, David said that they saw the dog or wolf that looked similar to a red wolf, but also could have been, again, a coyote if it was not a red wolf, near Man's Harbor, which is at Roanoke Island. It's on the mainland just before you get to the island. And then they drove for 10 more minutes before they hit something. So you have the harbor, and there is the Virginia Dare Memorial Bridge is like right there. But I'm guessing they didn't take this bridge. It could have been under construction or anything at that point in time. A lot of times in the off season, beaches will do road work that they can't do during the tourist season because tourists. So they didn't take Virginia Dare, so they probably took the Man's Harbor Bridge, which would have been a few minutes away, and they hit something. So he grabs his gun, he goes to check it out, and they have their experience. Now, I'm not going to overly nitpick this experience, but I will say a few things. All right. In one storytelling, he sees 2 creatures. In another storytelling, he sees 4. Is this the fish that keeps getting bigger, or can he not count, or what? Because there's a difference between I saw 2 things and I saw 4 things. And in a case like this, you need to know. You want me to believe your story? I need you to have consistent figures. That being said, remember when I mentioned the glinting teeth in the moonlight? In both Terror in the Woods and Dogman Encounters, he says the exact words, glinting in the moonlight. And he pauses and he tells his story in such a way that it sounds scripted. Like he's reading his own script. And I can say this as somebody who has tried to read things that I have written before. You know how you want them to sound in your mind. And so it feels like he's trying to hit those emotional like highlights and points by pausing in certain ways for dramatic effect. And it just, when you hear it more than once in the same exact way on 2 different things, it makes you go, why? Because when I tell a story and I say it one way and then I come back and I'm telling you again the same story, it's going to be the same story. I'm going to have the same information, but the way I say the words are going to be different unless I've rehearsed them in my head a lot. So when he did the Dogman Encounters, was it because it was after the Terror in the Woods, and so he already did have that script? But then again, the numbers change. Do you understand where I'm going with it? It's both too scripted and not enough scripted to where I'm having a hard time believing both. But so I want matching stories, but I want them to match in a way that feels natural and not scripted. Because once you start scripting it out, it no longer has that natural flow and cadence, and it makes it harder for me to believe, because that is not how people will naturally retell memories. All right. Now, one thing I do want to note, I did rag on Lisa really hard for Facebooking while David was out having his experience, and I thought she didn't hear the gunshot because she was too busy Facebooking, but she was Facebooking. Well, she was on her phone. She says she was playing on her phone. But she did hear the gunshot, so I will say that, but I find it really weird that during all of this, if I'm sitting in a truck, on my phone or not, and I hear something, I hear a gun go off, and I know my man has gotten out of the car with a gun, and he's walking around, and I hear a gunshot, I'm going to be looking around. Lisa, open up your eyes, woman. Shit goes down, and you don't see anything because you don't look in any of the mirrors. What? Do you have no stranger danger or anything? I mean, come on, look. You hear a gunshot, you should look around. One, to make sure that, your man's okay, but also two, even when he got back in the car, you don't look out the rear view mirrors to see, side mirrors or whatever, to see if you can see what happened. You don't even try? Alright, and one final thought about their experience right then and there. He takes a headshot. He misses. But that brings me to 2 points. One, you do not ever take a headshot unless you know what you are shooting at. He admits that he is shooting at an unknown creature. It could have been someone in a fucking Wolfman costume. How do I know this? I know a guy who used to dress up as Bigfoot and go hang out in country roads in the middle of the night to yell at drunks. He was also drunk at the same time too. But you do not take headshots unless you know who you are shooting at. Alright? But also, two, did you know it's illegal to kill a red wolf? Maybe. Don't shoot to kill things when you don't know what you're shooting. Even in the cases of coyotes, it is better to shoot to wound in that case, because they look so much like the red wolves. Do you really want to go to jail because you thought you were shooting a coyote and instead you shot one of the 12 red wolves that was left? Come on. So, again, always shoot to wound, don't shoot to kill, because also too, again, what if it was a person in the costume? I don't care what your stance is on guns. That is my stance on this. You do not shoot to kill. So, unless you know, again, what you are shooting at. But moving on. So, this is the piece of the story that really got me. They stay a fucking week. They could not stay the night in a location where they had some creepy vibes, but right where they had a legit encounter with something, they stay a week, and this is after a local supposedly said that he saw the same creatures. You stay a week? Do you know where I'm staying? The night, and then I'm going home. I'm not staying where something is coming after me. But they stay a week. They stay a week. And now, for all the other things too that he doesn't necessarily remember, that don't add up right, like timelines and things like that. He remembers that they stayed on Old Ferry Dock Road. He knew the name of the road very specifically. And again, it's just one of those things that's just why is that the key thing that you feel the need to put in there? And I do want to note that the encounter, or the Terror in the Woods visualization, just stopped at their encounter with the camper, and I think it showed them the next day talking to the local, but it didn't continue on with them staying a week. This was just off of the Dogman Encounters podcast that he mentions this. So anyways, sighting number 2. He hears something the last night they're there out at the camper, and I can't remember if he's actually saw something or if he just heard something. Lisa did not see or hear anything. And the next morning when he goes to tell the business owner's all, without him even fucking saying what it was he wanted to have a conversation about. What if he was like, man, I really need to talk to you about something, and it was because his toilet was leaking and left poop everywhere. But no, he doesn't even tell the dude what he needs to talk to him about, and dude's just like, shh, don't talk about that. That doesn't sit well with me at all. And then they fucking get in their car and they drive away, and he swears that one of them is staring at him. Y'all. Did he follow you home too, mister? Was he your new puppy dog? Because y'all. No. Nothing about this story comes across as real. Nothing. Maybe you went to go stay at Pettigrew, and maybe you were, creeped out because some people were standing on their property, and maybe you were stupid and did not know how state parks work, and it bothered you that the ranger was going home at night because, he had already worked a full fucking day. But hey, no, I understand. Maybe that all did happen. Do you know what didn't happen? Do you know what really didn't happen? Any kind of incident involving a canine cryptid. You did not hit anything with your car that was a canine cryptid. You didn't shoot anything that was a canine cryptid. They sure as shit didn't follow you afterwards, because you can't even tell me if there was 2 or 4 of them. The local guy did not describe this canine cryptid to a T to you because it doesn't fucking exist. And whenever you stayed that last night, again, after staying for a week in an area where you had a shootout with something supposedly that was a canine cryptid, it was running around your camper and everybody kind of knew and told you to hush, and then it fucking watched you leave. Y'all, there's a reason why I have over an hour of this mouth going off on these 2 knuckleheads, because this did not happen. Now, am I saying that there is no werewolf or dogman in North Carolina? I'm not saying that at all. You guys, this area is a very large area. There is possibility of something out there. Even before the Red Wolves came to North Carolina, there was reports in the mountains, North Carolina mountains, of dogmen, of werewolves. This is not anything that is new. Not at all. There's plenty of legend about dogmen in North Carolina. We even have something known as a wampus cat, in which a native woman was transformed into a cat after she followed her tribesmen because she believed her husband was cheating on her. And she saw elder magic she was not supposed to see, so they turned her into a cat. That is more believable than David and Lisa. I genuinely would believe that before I believe that David shot a werewolf or dogman. And that is something that I will continue with. But again, there's every possibility that we do, in fact, have some kind of canine cryptid running around North Carolina. In fact, I have marked in my collection of books all of the different canine and similar cryptid creatures that we have running around in the South. And there is very much something that people cannot explain that likes to get up on 2 legs and run around and attack people. But that is not what these people saw at all. This was just a story that was told to get 15 minutes of fame. Nothing more. And that is all we have for today, because I got to get off here and stream. I've got 5 minutes. I love you guys all so much. If you are unfamiliar with me streaming, come hang out on Twitch. It is The Lily Lore. Let's see. We are on Discord. I will drop that link down in the description. I also, too, have memberships on Buy Me a Coffee /The Lily Lore. All of my members, you get access to a lot of fun extras with me, including weekly vlogs. I am getting back in the habit of doing those. And what else do we have? Special access areas in our free Discord for our members only. If you are on Snapchat and you are one of my members, you get special access to my members only stories, which is the vlog basically live before it goes up on YouTube. And what else do we got? I can't remember everything else, but you guys know how it is with me, and I gotta run, and I gotta go, and I gotta do things. But I love you all. Big thank you to Sergio. We are going to continue with Pettigrew State Park, and we are going to look into, I believe it's called Somerset Place, Plantation, and the Pettigrew Cemetery to see what spooky hauntings we have there. And who knows, maybe we'll finally get that Where Jason I was so excited about at the very beginning.